You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Bob Harris, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. Gentlemen, it is week 11 already. Talk about this. It just breezes by. Here we are, beyond the midway point. We're starting to see what teams are. I think it's up for grabs. If you were to ask me who's going to win the Super Bowl tonight, which is a good thing. We like mystery. Mr. Harris, happy birthday. What is going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight?
It's cold. Or colder. Not cold like it is where you are or where Kyle is. You're in the eastern portions of the country, and I suspect it will be quite cold going forward, whereas here I get a warm day or two. I mean, for me, cold is like it's 48 degrees. I might keel over.
Yeah, that's warm. It's warm here.
So not too bad. All kinds of exciting things going on this week. I was curious, how did everyone make out? Kyle, how'd you do last week in your DFS?
I did not play as much because I was in North Carolina,
You were
and
traveling.
now I am sad because I'm back in Ohio.
And Justin?
Yeah, I did all right. It's, up and down. There's variance. I didn't, I'm not going to retire, but I did all right.
I just, I'm a tournament person. I only play tournaments, so breaking even is winning, and once again, I've come out a small amount ahead, and that's all, until the big one comes in, and it's coming. We all know it.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. Maybe we don't all know it. Well, I keep playing anyway. It doesn't really matter. And so we got a little news this week, gentlemen. I think for one thing, Justin, we've taken a ladle out of the sea of mediocrity. Some of the only good liquid left. Austin Hooper, one of the top tight ends this season, is going to miss a little time, along with Devonta Freeman. Brian Hill seems like this week's waiver wire darling, correct?
He certainly is. He's projecting well. Elo Smith is on IR with the neck. Yeah, from a volume standpoint, you look at projections tonight. Of course, it's only Tuesday. He's a top 10 back in terms of running backs overall. So you're definitely at him. And permitting the game flow goes okay. I can't see why he doesn't have 20 touches. So yeah, definitely in play.
Will he draw the Dvorchakian free square designation, Kyle?
Yeah, the slate doesn't really have any other options at free square. I do think playing, I don't know how much of a passing role he's going to get, so playing primarily the rushing running back on a team that has been as bad throughout the season as the Falcons, not the best play, but on this slate, I think he's 4,800 on DraftKings. He's as close to a free square as we're going to get. I'm pretty much, barring any changes, he's locked in my cash game lineups.
I talked to Justin Felder from Fox 5 in Atlanta today and just asked him, what about that passing role? And he said maybe you see a little Kenyon Barner in there and the passing downs, maybe some creative use of him. But Kadre Alston is basically a duplicate of Brian Hill. So it does look pretty good there, and I would say that it's worth exploring a little bit. Beyond that, we had some other, and at the tight end position, Luke Stalker, known more as a blocker, and Jaden Graham, kind of a great special teams player. Maybe I don't know, probably not even a dart toss there at the tight end position. Speaking of also at the tight end position, a great Monday night game, right, guys? That was as good as a game as you're going to see the Seattle Seahawks edging out the San Francisco 49ers in overtime. There was no George Kittle in that game for the San Francisco 49ers. Also knocked out of the game was Emmanuel Sanders and Matt Breida. Sounds like Sanders is going to be definitely day-to-day. They're saying this seems like it might be a longer-term thing. Same with Kittle, who watched the game from a booth upstairs in the stand, not down on the sideline, so they didn't want him standing on his neat leg that long. But Kyle Shanahan sounds like he thinks Kittle can return. Basically said, look, we've been around this guy long enough to know not to rule him out this early. But how concerned would you be about this San Francisco offense, Kyle, going against the Arizona Cardinals? if it was minus Kittle and Sanders. Is there anything you like there, not named Deebo Samuel or Tevin Coleman?
Oh, I mean,
sorry.
Deebo Samuel is a slam dunk play though. But yeah, that's kind of obvious. We won't belabor that too much. If you watch the game, you know that he's just clearly the number one receiver with those guys
target
out.
monster.
For me, it's very difficult to say with any confidence that like Kendrick Bourne is the guy. Came up with at least, I think, like one bad drop. So, I don't know. Probably not going to him. I do think maybe if Matt Breida is healthy, which, like, oh my God. Again, like, he just, like, the poor, I don't know if I, like, should even feel frustrated. I just feel bad for him, honestly. He gets hurt so much.
He's like the Terminator, though. I mean, he's breaking pieces off him, and he keeps staggering back out there and doing things. So
yeah, no. If they are without Kittle, without Sanders, I expect to see like more 2-back sets and just rotating their backs in more. So yeah, I think this is a small boost for Matt Breida, who's also just a talented receiver. So
let's say Breida is out this week. Would Mostert jump into the free square category?
Probably not the free square category because I do think with Brian Hill, you're getting 2/3 of the team's rushing work. He outcarried Kenyon Barner 20-1, I believe, in the Falcons game. Whereas I still think Raheem Mostert, you're getting like a 1B situation, but he does become a solid tournament play. I just don't think he's really that close to a free square.
All right, and so on the other side, Justin, Tyler Lockett sounds like a fairly serious injury, but it's under control. The Seahawks are on the bye this week, so he has time to heal. Pete Carroll, basically using Pete Carroll code language, basically said he expects him to be back, but he is in the hospital again a second night, Tuesday night. You get these compartment type situations where there's swelling in a small area. It can be very dangerous. You could lose a leg.
Right.
But Tyler Lockett, let's say he was to miss a game. How excited would you be about Josh Gordon?
Well, I would assume that they simplified the playbook at this stature, right? And he's a little bit of involvement last night. He's Josh Gordon, but I think a lot of us are, and not myself included, have clung on to that 2013 campaign of Gordon. Cut ties with him here. It's the DK Metcalf show there, and it's what a luxury that is for them to lose Tyler Lockett. Of course, Doug Baldwin is no longer there. Look, Gordon can be boom or bust. I don't know that, 6 years later, he is what he is, and he's probably an NFL wide receiver 3 that you're using the tight end. And let's face it, their identity offensively is Chris Carson, in spite of Russell Wilson's going to get a ton of MVP votes as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think, for me, look, I think the opportunity matters. And also, I was listening to some post-game, quotes from Russell Wilson and how he said them. He seems very excited to be playing with Josh Gordon, even the 2019 as opposed to the 2013. Mm-hmm. So opportunities matter.
Sure.
One thought, and by the way, Luke Wilson injured his hamstring. Ed Dixon may be back for the next game. I don't think Luke Wilson will. Again, the Carroll code suggested it was a legit injury, which probably means he might miss some time. So Dixon back, but Jacob Hollister is becoming a thing. I think anyone who has the trust of Russell Wilson is going to fare reasonably well because Russell Wilson is playing super good. That horrible interception notwithstanding. And given that, just one last thought on this game or this team heading into a bye that doesn't really matter this week for people. But DK Metcalf, I just wanted to send a memo to Draft Twitter. I don't want to hear about those cone drills anymore. Just stop it.
Yeah.
He's big and fast. He can
the Patriots
would
love to have him. The Patriots would love to have DK Metcalf at this point in time. They took N'Keal Harry over him.
Well, let me ask you about N'Keal Harry. It sounds like he's on track to return. He didn't return last week, was eligible to, but that sounded like more of a personnel issue as opposed to not needing him as, maybe they could have used him. Do you expect him back this week, Justin?
I think they are. It's still up in the air. I mean, he might play. Look, I read a number the other day that the Patriots haven't landed a competent wide receiver in about 17 years in the NFL draft. And right now, he's fallen into that category. So I don't know. It's going to be a lot of Julian Edelman. It's going to be a lot of Mohamed Sanu. The jury's still out whether or not Gronk's going to be back. But to be determined. I will say this. From an offensive standpoint, they need all the weaponry they can get. So if he is what they hoped he was when they drafted him, it could be big things down the stretch. But time will tell.
All right, so for the Detroit Lions, Matt Stafford could not get on the field last weekend. Fractured bones in his back. That harkens to the dreaded transverse process bones, the tiny little bones along the spine. It's possible he'll miss more games. He's a very tough man. That caused some consternation when he wasn't ruled out earlier than he was. And I, Matt Patricia, I'm not totally discounting what he said. He said, hey, look, I wanted to give him every chance out of respect for him. Makes
tough
sense.
guy. He's a tough
Jeff
guy.
Driscoll, he is. Jeff Driscoll, if you thought Jeff Driscoll was starting again, Kyle, how much would you be dialing back on that receiving core?
Yeah, I would probably pretty much stay away from it because it was basically most of their production in terms of fantasy came on that one fluke play. I think it was to Kenny Golladay. I don't know. He's a great player, and of course he can go up and win these 50-50 balls, but for everything to play out as it did, it was this deep end zone shot that the receiver kind of missed, or the defensive back kind of misplayed, and Golladay went up and got it. You're really banking on sort of fortunate events like that happening again. I still think if you have Kenny Golladay in season long, you're firing him up. But in DFS, it's probably just easy to rule out this offense. One maybe interesting thing to talk about is Ty Johnson got hurt. I believe concussion. And I wouldn't be talking about this if it weren't for the fact that J.D. McKissic got the majority of the carries afterwards, and I would have assumed that Paul Perkins would fulfill that role between the tackles, and McKissic would get it would be an ugly committee. If McKissic is getting half of the rushing work and all of the receiving game work, it's interesting to talk about playing him.
I agree with that. I was going to bring that up, and yes, you wonder where Where are you, Zach Zenner? But Paul Perkins,
he's just waiting for David Johnson to keel over. David Johnson,
right.
It's rough.
Boy, that's backfield in Arizona. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit too. But David Johnson, whether he's still hurting or just not good anymore,
he's just done.
I don't know.
It's going to be a mess there, and it's not going to get any prettier because one Chase Edmonds will return at some point as well,
right.
And it will then be a three-way split. One other injury situation worth noting: Jacoby Brissett seems like he got close last week, didn't make it back, and the mighty Miami Dolphins put the hurt on the Indianapolis Colts. You guys might not have heard this, but the Dolphins are getting better. That said, I believe they might have hit the ceiling there. So the improvement might be coming to an end. But Brissett maybe gets T.Y. Hilton back, maybe not. They're working on kickers there. How much do you not like the Colts, Justin, this week, given the matchup and given all the uncertainty surrounding the health of the skill players?
Well, they get the Jags, so that's good. Divisional matchup at home, so that is also good. It's been a dumpster fire. This team, it's been like a sad song. I mean, from Andrew Luck to T.Y. Hilton going down, this had the ingredients of a team that I thought was going to compete in the AFC down the stretch. Great offensive line intact. The defense has been pretty good. Marlon Mack is kind of tapered off. I think the volume's still going to be there. But, and they have a young cast of wide receivers and Zach Pascal, and I don't know. I'm not optimistic about the Colts. I don't like them at all. I do like the fact that it's a home game, and I think that, Marlon Mack is going to have a game or two. But it's one of these teams similar to the team that we were just talking about, like the Lions, where it's bleak. Take a couple pieces away from that team, and all of a sudden, there's fantasy avoidance unless you're in dire need of some of these components, like the Jack Doyles of the world or the Ebrons, and that's scraping the surface.
Right, I feel like they're kind of a chameleon team, and then credit to Frank Reich, taking advantage and scheming to the strengths at any given time and the personnel issues, and I think that just makes it a little dicey for us. Do you see any value there, Kyle?
I guess with Marlon Mack, last week in a losing effort, you still locked up almost 20. You locked up 20 touches, but I don't know. I think it's like Justin said. I think both the tight ends are I don't know, if you lost Austin Hooper and you lost George Kittle or whomever, they're totally in play because we've seen Jack Doyle run as the number one tight end, and then we've seen Eric Ebron score an inordinate amount of touchdowns regardless of who's throwing him the ball. And we saw last week, when all their receivers are down, he can get on the field a decent amount and they can work him into the matchups. But they're all kind of desperation flex plays. You can't really have any confidence in any of them. And in DFS, it's another offense just easier to cross off.
Sure.
One more situation before we jump into the DFS picks this week is on the other side of the football. Nick Foles returns to the starting lineup. The mustache resumes the bench gear, the clipboard holding and whatnot. Gardner Minshew. And look, he fared pretty damn well. I mean, better than I think a lot of us expected. But Foles comes back. Is there a level of concern for you, Justin, in terms of the receiving core, how the workload is split up? Who is Foles going to have the chemistry with? I mean, look, we love D.D. Westbrook for like a half of a preseason game with Foles. We liked DJ Chark was the guy catching a long touchdown on the play Foles was hurt on. I keep remembering that Nick Foles and Chris Conley spent a lot of time doing second-team reps in Kansas City for a year. Which of these guys seems like the best bet for you with Foles coming back?
You're absolutely right. And look, it was DJ Chark was going to be a top 10 wide receiver a couple of weeks ago, and then it's interesting how things shake out. Look, if I was to bet, it would be D.D. Westbrook, but he's got the Q tag. It is Tuesday.
He did open the week practicing.
Right.
They returned on Monday, so I think the local view is he's going to be back. So let's assume he is. Is that your guy?
He is my guy. We saw that rapport formed, and it's interesting how things can change. So I think it is D.D. Westbrook tonight. Again, it's another football team where I think primarily their identity is to run the football. You have Leonard Fournette. They're going to use Leonard Fournette until his wheels fall off, and his wheels historically have a tendency to fall off. So it's a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo that I'm not sure that I want to play. But gun to my head, it's D.D. Westbrook because of the rapport that we've seen between the two already.
Pop quiz, Dvorchak. Do the Jaguars have a tight end? Who is he, and does he matter?
Is Josh Oliver the starter? James O'Shaughnessy
might be. I think it's all. I think your general premise here with your answer is correct.
It's the sea of mediocrity. Do you see? Do you understand this? We're talking about
bottom of the sea.
That is the sea of atrocity right there.
Just that is tone.
All right, let's dive into the DFS slate. I'll start with you, Kyle, and your quarterback choices.
Yeah, so I think this week, one player I'm just honestly surprised didn't get priced up on DraftKings because of the matchup alone is Kyle Allen versus Atlanta.
Yes.
Juicy Atlanta matchup. Like, even if Christian McCaffrey gets there, he's liable to get there through the air. So it's like, it doesn't feel like there's much of a way that he doesn't get there at his price for 5,300. He's gone over 15 points in every single one of his games except for one, which is against the Niners. Tough matchup. Oh, and he didn't get there against the Texans. So every game except for two. No Cam Newton. His weapons are incredible between DJ Moore, who's getting averaging 10 targets a game over the past 4 or 5 games, and Curtis Samuel, who gives Kyle Allen a pretty high weekly upside, I think, just because of the air yards that are back behind all of his targets. So I really just think it's the best price play. He's not my highest projected play by any means. And then outside of that, I think you are probably stacking a lot of Baltimore versus Houston. My favorite game personally because of the quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson 7,700 just feels like it doesn't factor in obviously his rushing upside, but just his upside in this game. It could be the highest scoring game of the week, and we saw him get there on probably 3/4 or so of the snaps last week because he got to get pulled so early. He's just so good.
He is. And he's a pocket guy. He's a pocket quarterback. Mr. Harris, you were all over him in best balls this offseason.
I was. Yes, I am.
All over him.
And I am winning a ton of money. I can tell you that as well, thanks to him and in a lot of season-long leagues. Just back to the Allen and the Falcons matchup, any fears from either of you that last week's Falcons defense shows up and that Tack McKinley, who goes sack crazy even in a tough matchup, gets something going?
No, not really. I mean, after all, they are the Atlanta Falcons. I think there was some fantasy disappointment in terms of that game as a whole, even though Michael Thomas ate.
Oh, yes, he did.
And he always eats, which is why he's 10,000 this week, or right around 10,000. I think Kyle is absolutely right with Kyle Allen, and based on the price, based on the matchup, based on the opponent. You look at a guy like Kyle Allen, he's coming into his own, thrown into the flames. Cam Newton goes on. He's got goes out. Too much weaponry around Kyle Allen at this point. You have the best running back in football. You have a seasoned veteran in Greg Olsen at tight end. You have a couple of stud wide receivers. He's force-feeding DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. So it's not necessarily Kyle Allen, the player, but for me, it's the offense that's surrounding him and, of course, the home matchup. So dollar for dollar, he might be the best play on the slate. at quarterback.
So I don't necessarily disagree with that. Just in general, I mean, is Lamar Jackson turning into a guy we have to pay for just about every week?
Yeah,
Patrick Mahomes-esque.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what we've seen from Mahomes, but I think honestly you get a higher floor because we've seen games where Mahomes, they just get to the 5-yard line and run it in. Like, that is possible, but you get, like, literally running back 2, borderline running back 1 upside. Like, I think he's on pace for 1,000 yards on the ground. So I think he has that similar median mean projection, but with a higher floor. It is in that range.
Yeah, as I ponder the rest of the season of my DFS 3-and-out tournament column, I think it's just going to be 2-and-out because one of those 3 is going to be Lamar Jackson every week. Running backs, Justin, dive in.
It is going to be, well, we talked about Brian Hill. I think that is the play. He's going to be a digging in the crates play for me this week. You look at Christian McCaffrey right up at the top and you're like, all right, 10-5. I don't think I can do it this week, but my God. Is he a bell cow? And obviously touches are the new carries. This guy's going to have 250 carries, probably over 100 receptions this year. It's like, there's got to be a week where you fade him and he does not much. But his involvement he's the identity of the Carolina Panthers offense. So I'm going to have to pay for Christian McCaffrey because he's going to put up 40 and you don't have him and you're going to be in a pinch. If you don't pay for Christian McCaffrey, I think it would behoove you to go to Dalvin Cook for $1,600 less. I mean, if it's not Christian McCaffrey as the best running back in the NFL, it's certainly Dalvin Cook this season. And he'll get some MVP votes as well. I think you know what you're going to get out of Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey every single week. And outside of those two so far in 2019, you really don't know what you're going to get out of a lot of these guys, including the Zeke Elliott's and the Fournettes. Alvin Kamara has been dinged up. Of course, Le'Veon Bell, the situation is a little different in New York than it was in Pittsburgh for all those years. If we're going to pay down a little bit, it's probably going to be Josh Jacobs, and I wanted to pick on the Cincinnati Bengals with Derek Carr as another quarterback player who I loved.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, yep. Derek Carr is a great play this week, which is strange. You pay over $6,000 for Derek Carr. Probably use Tyrell Williams with him. Darren Waller is the highest regarded tight end this week, who's come back to earth over the last 3 weeks or so. So Josh Jacobs, 6,900, feels right. This is a guy that I think, we talk about bell cows. I think he can be a 3-down back in spite of, he doesn't have 5-6 receptions every week, but I think you can rest assured he's going to kiss 20 carries and nearly 100 yards. So it's against the Cincinnati Bengals, who've just been absolutely atrocious. I feel comfortable spending 6,900 on Josh Jacobs. If I dig way down in somewhat of a tournament sense, it would probably be a player like Ronald Jones. I think he's priced too cheap at 5,200. I know he's getting the Saints. I know it's a home game, but again, volume. Bruce Arians was optimistic about Ronald Jones. Finally handed him the keys for the past couple of weeks. So in a tournament, I could see myself having some Ronald Jones based on his price, but it's going to be, I feel like it's a week you can pay for running backs and go elsewhere at wide receiver.
Right, I don't want to get too far astray, but you mentioned Waller. And, look, we see, they're playing someone, right? They're not playing anyone. And other teams are watching film, and they see these guys, and they realize they have to stop players. But I would say, for Waller, something to watch is the same thing we saw with Mark Andrews last week, right? I mean, there's you can scheme against these guys, but at some point they're going to make plays. They're still going to design them. In fact, I think for Baltimore, Marquise Brown was the only wide receiver targeted. Four passes. And everything else went to the tight ends. I think in Oakland, similarly, Darren Waller is going to be a big part of that going forward. And if teams just to get him, we'll find out how uncoverable, as we heard all summer, he was when he's got to beat these coverages. But and one other thing on Carr, I think if you check the schedule, Cincinnati this week, I think they have 2 more pretty favorable schedules. So if you're in a pinch and season-long type play, maybe he's a guy that can give you a little bit of a shelf life if you're
We've been truthers. We've been Derek Carr truthers for the last couple of years.
To be fair, I mean, most of my truthing came when I thought Antonio Brown was going to be his primary target. But look, he has not been horrible. I'm going to say that. So
Amari Cooper left,
right? Yes. Kyle, jump into your running backs, please.
My running backs, for me, it starts with Brian Hill. Like, that is just the free square we have of the week. I don't think he's, like, as much of a lock as Jalen Samuels. Like, the week Jalen Samuels was the free square, I locked him in every single tournament lineup I played. I won't be doing that necessarily with Brian Hill. Still think he has to get into your cash games. Outside of that, I will probably be looking at old Lenny Fournette. Right now, if the season ended today, he would have the 4th most yards from scrimmage with 1 or less touchdowns, and I cannot wait for that touchdown regression to hit. I called it last week with Christian Kirk, and somehow didn't win all the monies. Like, I'll probably look to, like, DraftKings support, assuming I should be getting, like, a lot of money going back. I don't know. But, no, I mean, he's getting, like, top 3, I believe, NFL volume in terms of touches per game. He's getting an incredible amount of targets, which is unusual for Fournette throughout his career. But going back to college, he had a pretty solid, like, market share of targets then. I think there's no reason to expect that he doesn't continue to get targeted heavily in the passing game. And then on top of that, they're playing like the struggling Indy team that I think they could easily take a win over. So game script could be positive, and if it's negative, he's just going to get more passes. And baby, those touchdowns are coming. So I think that's probably where I'm starting in cash. I think on top of that, you could probably look to a guy like J.D. McKissick, who we talked about earlier. I don't mind going back to Alvin Kamara. He ended up he didn't have a great game, but he ended up saving it with a ton of targets on like the last drive and a half, I think. Still ended up getting 10 targets. The rushing attempts weren't really there, but you never really bought an Alvin Kamara for the rushing attempts. And hopefully, as he gets back into the game more, he ends up getting the ball more. But for the reason we saw last week, 4 rushing attempts, I'm not playing him anywhere close to my cash game lineups. But Alvin Kamara, underowned, underpriced at 7,400. Like, that's a recipe for a good tournament play. So that's probably where I'll be starting. And I also like the Ronald Jones call. Didn't really get a ton of a price up, 5,200. I get New Orleans defense is good, but it's at home. You're on a high-scoring offense. Your touchdown equity is pretty solid, and we saw him finally get used in the passing game. Don't expect it to, 8 targets last week and 8 catches. Don't expect that to happen again, but that at least shows some sign of, 3-down usage. So I like that call from Justin as well.
Kyle, continue on into the wide receiving realm, if you would.
It happened. It finally happened. They priced up Michael Thomas. They priced up Michael Thomas in 9,900. I believe in the past, maybe in the history of DraftKings, that is the number 2 highest price all time. Antonio Brown a few years ago was higher than that once, but that's it. So Michael Thomas, not as enthused about playing him. One sneaky play that I think is a borderline cash play. It depends where I want to pay up and pay down. 14 targets over the past 2 games for Russell Gage. Playing, at least averaging 48 snaps for the team. He's basically filled into this Mohamed Sanu light role. He's running mostly out of the slot. He's getting red zone work. He's got a red zone catch in each of the past 2 games. It's just, he's so incredibly cheap, 3,300 for one of the pass heaviest teams in the NFL. You're getting a decent amount of slot work. I just don't see how you can't fire him up, at least in your tournament lineups when you're stacking Atlanta, Carolina. He also gives good correlation if you run him with McCaffrey, and he's cheap, so he lets you get to McCaffrey. So I like the way he pairs with McCaffrey pretty well. And then on top of that, I'd probably be looking to go back to Chris Godwin just because I think Mike Evans will be higher owned. But honestly, I think every week you just got to have a decent share of both of them. Chris Godwin getting a ton of high percentage, high conversion routes in the slot. But then Mike Evans just gets all of them sweet air yards. So if I'm stacking this game, I'm probably only running one of them in any of my stacks because they've just been so negatively correlated over the past 16 games that I think Godwin would probably garner a bit higher ownership from me personally. But I'm gonna be over the field on both of those too. And then finally, DJ Moore, 5,900. I think he's sort of moving into, I don't want to say overpriced, but correct pricing. Still 11 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, and 10 targets in the past 4 games. I don't want to say he's a lock for the 100-yard bonus, but he is easily projecting to get close to the 100-yard bonus. He's gotten there in the past 2 games. And, oh man, he's another guy. Can we get this man into the end zone? Has not scored more than he scored once this season.
He needs to take some Christian Kirk lessons.
I mean, it's bound to happen. Touchdowns are just so random. Volume predicts them better than anything. They're coming, and even if they don't come, 100-yard bonus is good enough. So I love DJ Moore. I still think he's probably $500 or $600 away from being for being correctly priced.
Justin, I sensed that you cared to rebut the entire Chris Godwin situation. Do tell, and go ahead and dive into your wide receiver.
It's frustrating there, and it's been a lot of Godwin that I've played, and Mike Evans, who's been, I think, one of the more underappreciated wide receivers in the NFL over the last few years. Well, the ABs and the Nukes of the world kind of take the limelight. Look, Mike Thomas is he's kind of having a Julio Jones type year. The receptions are there, the yards are there, but the touchdowns are not. I can't justify 9-9 for Michael Thomas. He's shown sub 20 fantasy point production on numerous occasions, at least 4 times this year. If I'm going to spend that kind of dough, it's going to be on Christian McCaffrey because he does not do that. You get your bang for your buck when you do pay for Christian McCaffrey. So it seems a little high. I can get that type of production on the cheap. I do like Amari Cooper. I do love Dak Prescott this week against Detroit. I think that Dak Prescott is going to light him up. It's an interesting Dallas offense. We've been so accustomed to them running the football, and Dak Prescott is somewhat of an Alex Smith, and all of a sudden it's guns blazing with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper is a special wide receiver. We saw him polished come out of Alabama and departed from Derek Carr, but clear rapport with Dak Prescott right off the bat. So 7,700, you're getting him for $2K less than Michael Thomas. I think he can put up the same type of numbers. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, and they just can't seem to get anything right. And Julian Edelman at 7,600, you know what you're getting out of Julian Edelman, and that's probably 10 to 15 targets every single week. DraftKings is a PPR site, so 7,600, feel good there. Is he going to have a 30-point week? No, but I think he's safe enough. And again, there's a level of comfortability when it comes to Julian Edelman. If I'm going to pay down, I got to agree with Kyle in terms of DJ Moore. We talk about rapport is a big reason why we love Kyle Allen. I think DJ Moore is a big reason why. Sub 6K, 21 targets over the last 2 weeks. The touchdowns are not there, but they're similar home runs in baseball. I mean, they will come eventually, and this could be the week that he does get in the end zone. Of course, you're paying for the receptions, and you don't have to break the bank for him. I will say this. I want to stack that Raiders game, or on the Raiders side anyways, and if I'm going to go to the other side, it's going to be Tyler Boyd. Based on the game script, they could be getting pounded. I think Tyler Boyd is kind of another one of these guys. The first couple weeks of the season, we thought Boyd was going to be wide receiver one. Even when A.J. Green comes back, his numbers are just as good, if not better, when A.J. Green is there. Like we know what Tyler Boyd is. I think he's another guy that can have 8 to 10 targets every single week. 5,200, you're paying for the receptions, and I think Tyler Boyd can pay that tag off, particularly if they're trailing. One more name I'll throw at you. It's going to be Deebo Samuel. You know what? I like Randall Cobb as well, but you're going to have to. It's a tricky situation because if you do stack the Cowboys, you're going to either have to have Cooper, Cobb, Gallup, or Cobb. So, a little bit of a swerve, but Randall Cobb, I mean, he still has it in shades of what he did with Aaron Rodgers. Going to be Deebo Samuel, 4K. If Emmanuel Sanders does not play, 11 targets last week, 8 receptions. Look, he could be a target monster, 4K. Jimmy Garoppolo's got to feed somebody. George Kittle doesn't play, all the more reason for Deebo Samuel for me. So the list is not that long tonight. Again, it's only Tuesday. But there is some value I sense at the top. Even DeAndre Hopkins at this point, guys. I mean, $1,800 cheaper than Michael Thomas. I get it's against Baltimore, but it's DeAndre Hopkins. So if I'm going to pay way up, it's not going to be Michael Thomas. It'll be DeAndre Hopkins or Amari Cooper.
Give me a short list of tight ends, Justin.
It's getting shorter by the week. It really is. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This is why
Howard is the only guy on it, right? It was Arizona. He crushed them.
It's Jack Doyle. It's actually now it's Jared Cook. No, Darren Waller projects as the highest projected tight end this week in a game that, of course, we want to pick on the Bengals, 5,500. You could go there. You could go back to Mark Andrews. I mean, I think, you're talking about Lamar Jackson, and what's made him even more impressive is the fact that he hasn't had that wide receiver. He's done all this, doesn't have Steve Smith, doesn't have Anquan Bolden, has been reliant upon Mark Andrews. And so it really has been impressive for Lamar Jackson. So if I'm going to use Jackson, it would behoove you to probably use Mark Andrews as well. Look, Zach Ertz against the Patriots in a tournament. Zach Ertz is still Zach Ertz, and people see that red 7th under OPRK and fear the Patriots. I think Zach Ertz, week 9, we saw what he did against the Bears. He could do that against the Patriots, 5K. This is a guy we're used to seeing right around 7K. I think you have to dig deep in the sea of mediocrity this week, and I try not to, but I think you can get away with it with Kittle being questionable, Austin Hooper being questionable, and that's when guys like Hawkinson and Noah Fant come into play, and I think that Fant, without Emmanuel Sanders, the usage has gone up. TJ Hawkinson, kind of a crapshoot. And the last guy I will mention is Kyle Rudolph. Spectacular one-handed catch last week. Doesn't look like Adam Thielen is going to play. The usage will go up there, 10 targets over the last 2 weeks. Gentlemen, Kyle Rudolph has been one of the best tight ends in football over the last 5 years. Kind of one of these unsung heroes for that Vikings offense, 3,600. The offense has to come from somewhere, and I think that Kirk Cousins likes him. So 3,600, and I say this with very little confidence about any of these guys, even if I'm paying way up for Mark Andrews or Darren Waller. So might be a good week to diversify your lineups because I don't think there's a sure shot at tight end week 11.
You're right about Fant. The usage has gone up nicely. I think he's on the field well over 80% of the snaps since Sanders is out. But one thing about you mentioned Dalvin Cook earlier, and now talking about Rudolph, I think it's interesting. The Vikings are throwing the ball the second least amount of any team in the league, and they're still pretty efficient with it.
Right.
So I'm kind of with you on Rudolph. I think he's kind of growing on me, maybe because he saved my bacon in a couple of season-long leagues this last week in particular. But Kyle, who do you like this week?
Dude, tight end is so bad this week. I think Zach Ertz is a fine call at 5. Like, we saw him last season being, like, at over 6K the whole season. He's getting that same volume, so that's a good call. I like Greg Olsen, especially in the, like, if I'm running Kyle Allen, I think you have to run him back with somebody. You can even run him back with two or three options because they just get the ball so much to basically 3 to 4 players. So Greg Olsen has, like, 5 games, I believe, of 7 or more targets this season. Actually, 6 games of 7 or more targets this season. Playing all the snaps, like there's nobody else taking him off the field, so I think he's one of the better points per salary dollars plays. There aren't many good ones. And then, Bob, you brought up another one, O.J. Howard. Like, legitimately, if we expect what happened last week to continue, basically he played every single snap but one. He did. He played 84 to 85 snaps, and Cameron Brate played like 11 or 15, and he's done that in the past 2 weeks. It just seems like Cameron Brate's probably not healthy. Like they have him sort of running this reserve role. And if that is expected to continue, then you're getting like a starting tight end on a really good offense, who's not only starting tight end, he played almost every single snap. So O.J. Howard,
and a very talented guy. Just because Bruce Arians has forgotten about him does not mean he's not still a great player. It's just he's not getting the usage, and maybe at some point Bruce Arians snaps too. Maybe he's watched some film or something of the Arizona game.
Yeah, I mean 7 targets last week. Maybe he watched going into the Arizona game. Like it's. Yeah, if he's getting that sort of volume, I think you have to consider him in cash. I'll probably be going Greg Olsen. And we need to move off tight ends when I look up Ross Dwelly. I think he's got to be min price. No, what? Oh my god. He's 3,400. Dude, what? Okay, so yeah, just play Greg Olsen. Don't play Ross Dwelly. Holy sweet.
What's Garrett Selleck? Maybe, no.
The projection I'm looking at doesn't have him projected enough points to list him.
Hayden Hurst, your boy Hayden
right,
Hurst,
well,
30-year-old.
While we're talking about Baltimore, just one, as we're closing out here, some great selections by you fellows. Again, as always, check out the website for Justin's Digging in the Crates. Great low price, and Kyle will have his cash and tournament breakdowns. He already has his injury review, and kind of free agent look ahead up this week. So go check that out. There'll be tons more content on the site throughout. If you're not a subscriber to the website, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial. You can get 2 weeks free, see what we're all up to, and check out all the constant updates, the rankings. Kyle does a great set of season-long weekly rankings. The staff rankings are there too. Gary Davenport's IDP tip sheets available. Tons of stuff up there, man. Just go check it out. Peruse. It's footballdiehards.com/free trial. But on, Lamar Jackson, I mean, there's something about this, and I get the same vibe with the Cardinals, and they're not there yet, but they're all in on this kid, right? That's the thing. They went all in on Lamar Jackson. If you watched Good Morning Football on Tuesday, they had a great clip of John Harbaugh sitting down, and maybe you could put it on your Google device, just a Harbaugh Jackson conversation. John Harbaugh really, just expressing how much gratitude and joy he has having this kid as his quarterback and telling him what he loves about him. It was a phenomenal, moment to look in the sidelines. But it's true. This team is all in on him. They changed their offensive coordinator. Went with Greg Roman, a guy who's known, go back to Colin Kaepernick's great success in San Francisco. There's Greg Roman. Go to Tyrod Taylor's big year in Buffalo. There was Greg Roman. They've just gone all in on him, and they're doing things that suit his skills and letting him be the guy he is. And maybe this will change the way that teams look at their prospects going forward, just like Arizona with Kyler Murray. I mean,
sure.
They didn't just go all in on him. They went all in on him, a coach to run him, receivers to run with him. So these are all things that we'll be looking for in the future.
Big investments. And not to cut you off, but you talk about Lamar Jackson, talk about a big investment. He went one pick after Sony Michel. Now, obviously, there's a lot of buzz around here. When is the end going to come for Tom Brady, right? And there was a lot of buzz that the Pats probably should have drafted Lamar Jackson. So, in hindsight, somebody's scratching their head going, maybe this guy could have learned a little bit, holding the clipboard for Tom Brady, and then you go from Tom Brady.
Just let him go.
So tonight, who would you rather have on your team? Would you rather have Lamar Jackson, or would you rather have Sony Michel? And I think we can all be in agreement that Patrick Mahomes is the answer. But
I feel like that's a trick question.
Forward thinking, it would be nice to see Lamar Jackson follow up Tom Brady.
I think we'll see some of that going forward. Teams will maybe take a little different view of how they assess quarterbacks, and not all of them will, though. But the smart ones, I think, will pick up on this and maybe take some chances. Kyle, you want to finish this thing, or Justin, you finish this off?
Well, let's finish it off by talking a couple defenses, if that's all right. I'm going to go right back to the Patriots.
I always forget the defenses. I hate them.
It's fine. Yeah, the Patriots are discounted at 3,500. People are going to short-term memories. They were not the Patriots defense at Baltimore. That's going to have people hesitant. But when you look at the rest of the year, 19 picks, 32 sacks, 6 touchdowns, you're basically getting a running back, a mid-range running back at 3,500. I mean, from a production standpoint. So I'm not going to fool around this week. I'm going to go right back to the Patriots at Philadelphia. I think they're going to get at Wentz. I think they will pay off that tag. I'm also not going to fool around, and I will pay for the 49ers. I think the 49ers, similar to the Pats, their defense carries them. If they're going to be successful, it's going to go through their defense. So it's going to be the Niners. It's going to be the Patriots for me. Kyle, I know you don't like to spend up. I don't like to fool around. Although I will say this: I've had the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 3 weeks, and they've been 2,600, 2,800. I've loved them. Their numbers have been equivalent to the Niners and the Patriots. Well, not the Patriots. They're in a league of their own. So, is there anybody jumping out of you this week, Kyle, that's cheap from a defensive standpoint that you're liking?
Yeah, so I think, if you want to pay all the way down, you'll never talk me off of playing a defense that's 1,500 because they need, 7 points. They need a handful of sacks and the team not to go for 30 on them. So the Arizona defense going against the Seattle offense that, I think they've run the ball well, but Jimmy Garoppolo has made some serious mistakes. He's taken some sacks like we saw in the Monday night game. He turned the ball over and ended up being a score. So for me, I don't mind playing Arizona into that. I think it's a tournament-only play because you could be catching a fat zero burger there. Paying up a little more. There are 2 defenses just below 3K, New Orleans and Washington. Anytime you can play a talented defense against Jameis Winston for 2.9, I'm always about that. And then Washington, the Jets are just a bad NFL offense. And as far as the bad teams go in the NFL, Washington's defense hasn't been the worst. Miami is struggling to average 1 fantasy point a game as a defense. The Jets aren't, or Washington is not in that league. So I'm fine with playing any competent defense against the Jets. That's probably pretty much where I'm going to be going. Although if there were a time to pay up for the Patriots, at least it'd be this week where they're not 4K. And I don't mind they're playing the Eagles, who kind of struggle without Deshaun Jackson. So
I got to say, Chandler Jones alone is worth the price of Arizona's admission almost, right? Just if you're looking for a disruptive playmaker. So I kind of agree with that take.
Oh, yeah, for certain. Another former Patriot.
Justin, are you anywhere near New England?
Yeah, you have a lot of obscure Patriots knowledge. It's strange.
Well, Jones is a free. I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. And they don't
You've
get
seen
married.
a lot, man.
They don't get married to names around here. Jones is one of them, and but they've done just fine without him.
This is true. All right, let's wrap it up, fellows.
Yeah, from Cleveland, they don't get married to names around here, but for different reasons, because most of them end up being bad. So, for myself, Bob already talked about all the stuff you can find. FootballDiehards.com. It'll all be there. So for myself, at Kyle Tweets here, for Justin at Justin Lonero, and Bob at Football Diehard. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next week.